When people hear the phrase become unrecognizable, they often think about changing their appearance, new haircut, new clothes, maybe a new workout plan. But what if I told you that the most powerful way to become unrecognizable isn't about what people see, but about what they feel when they meet you? The truth is, 21 days is not enough to completely reinvent your life. But it is enough to create so much momentum, so much clarity, and so much change in your habits and mindset that you are no longer the same person you were 3 weeks ago. Let's be honest, most people wait for the right time to change. They wait for a Monday, for New Year's, for life to give them permission. But transformation doesn't come from waiting, it comes from deciding. And when you decide, here's what happens in 21 days. In the first 7 days, you break patterns. You say no to what drains you and yes to what feeds you. That could mean waking up earlier, journaling, reading, exercising, or even simply practicing gratitude daily. This is not about perfection, it's about disrupting your autopilot. The next 7 days are about replacing. You're not just removing bad habits, you're installing better ones. If you quit wasting time on endless scrolling, what will you do instead? If you stop complaining, what will you talk about instead? You replace the noise with signal, the distraction with purpose. And in the last 7 days, something magical happens. People start noticing. They don't know what's different, but the energy is sharper. Your voice carries more certainty. Your presence feels lighter. That's when you realize you've become unrecognizable. Not because you changed your face or your clothes, but because you've changed your state. Becoming unrecognizable isn't about pretending to be someone else. It's about peeling away the layers of excuses, fears, and bad habits until the real you is so visible that even you can't believe you hid it for so long. So start today, because in 21 days, you can't become someone else, but you can become the version of yourself you always knew you could be. And that, my friend, is the most powerful transformation of all. Fefke notes from the speech, transformation begins with a decision, not a date on the calendar. The first 7 days are for breaking patterns that no longer serve you. The next 7 days are for replacing bad habits with purposeful ones. The final 7 days reveal your new energy, presence, and mindset to the world. Becoming unrecognizable is about revealing your true self, not creating a fake one. Transformation begins with a decision, not a date on the calendar. This truth is something most people underestimate because they believe change is tied to external triggers. They wait for January 1st, for their birthday, for a Monday, for the start of a new month, or for some life event that will finally push them into action. The problem with this thinking is that it places the responsibility for change on the calendar instead of on the individual. When you tie your transformation to a date, you're unconsciously saying, I'll change when the conditions are right. And that means if those conditions never arrive, or if they don't feel perfect, you never begin. It's a clever way the mind procrastinates while pretending to plan. True transformation begins the moment you decide you will no longer tolerate the gap between who you are and who you could be. That decision can happen at 3 a.m. on a random Wednesday or in the middle of eating lunch. It doesn't need fanfare. It doesn't need witnesses. It doesn't need to be marked on a calendar. It's an internal switch that flips quietly but permanently. And from that moment forward, you are no longer negotiating with your old habits and excuses. This is why some people seem to make sudden dramatic changes seemingly overnight. They didn't wait until Monday. They simply chose, and choice is more powerful than time. When the decision is real, it carries weight. You feel it in your body, in your thoughts, and in your behavior almost immediately. A person who has decided to get healthy doesn't need to start next month. They get up the next morning and move their body. A person who has decided to start a business doesn't just research endlessly. They take one small, tangible step that same day. The action may be small, but the shift in identity is massive. You're no longer a person thinking about changing, you're a person who is changing. This is why decision is the foundation of transformation. Without it, all the planning in the world is meaningless. You can create detailed schedules, buy new planners, set alarms, and write down goals. But if you haven't decided at the core level that you're done living in your old patterns, you'll find ways to break every plan you make. The calendar doesn't hold you accountable, your commitment does. And commitment is born in the moment you decide. A decision isn't just a fleeting feeling of motivation. It's not waking up inspired one morning and saying, I'll give it a try. A true decision is final. It feels like drawing a line in the sand and saying, I'm not stepping back over this no matter what. That's why many people confuse motivation with decision. Motivation fades when you feel tired, stressed, or discouraged. Decision doesn't fade, it demands action whether you feel like it or not. The beauty of choosing transformation without waiting for the right time is that it instantly puts you ahead of 99% of people. Most will still be stuck in the loop of waiting for inspiration, for external validation, for their schedule to clear, for someone else to go first. But when you decide now, you bypass that loop and enter a different reality, one where progress is measured not in weeks or months, but in moments of choice stacked one after another. And here's the thing, when you decide, the mind starts working differently. You begin to notice opportunities you overlooked before. You pay attention to details that align with your goal. You feel uncomfortable staying in the environments and conversations that contradict your new direction. Decision rewires your focus because the brain seeks to prove itself right. If you've decided to change, It will look for evidence that you are indeed changing, and that makes every small win reinforce the bigger picture. It's also worth noting that decision is not the same as knowing how everything will work out. Most people delay change because they want certainty. They want the entire map before taking the first step. But transformation rarely works like that. You decide first, then the path reveals itself in pieces. Just like headlights on a dark road only show you a few meters ahead, you see enough to move forward and the rest unfolds as you go. This is why those who wait for perfect clarity before starting rarely start at all. So the truth is, the 21 days of transformation don't begin when the calendar says they should. They begin the instant you decide, and that instant could be right now. The sooner you realize that you don't need a special date to begin, the sooner you remove the invisible barrier that's been holding you back. Decision is the spark. Without it, nothing changes. With it, everything can. The first 7 days are for breaking patterns that no longer serve you. This is the stage where you begin to disrupt the automatic behaviors and unconscious routines that have been keeping you exactly where you are. It's not glamorous and it's not always easy because patterns are comfortable. They're predictable. They've been repeated so many times that they've become part of your identity. You don't even think about them. You just do them. But if you want to become unrecognizable in 21 days, these first 7 days are about interrupting that autopilot mode. You start by noticing. Most people underestimate how much of their life runs on default settings. They wake up at the same time, scroll on their phone for the same amount of minutes, eat the same kind of breakfast, take the same route to work, complain about the same things, and unwind in the same ways. None of this is inherently wrong, but if those routines don't align with the person you want to become, they're silently holding you back. Awareness is the first step. You cannot break what you cannot see. Once you've identified these patterns, you start disrupting them, not by overhauling everything at once, but by making deliberate changes that force your brain to pay attention. This is important because the brain is a creature of efficiency. It prefers doing what it's always done, using as little energy as possible. That's why habits, good or bad, are so sticky. To break them, you have to introduce friction, something that forces the brain to step out of its comfort zone. If you normally wake up and immediately reach for your phone, put it in another room the night before. If you always end your day with hours of mindless TV, replace just 30 minutes of that time with reading, stretching, or journaling. These small interruptions send a powerful message to yourself: I am no longer running on the same script. The first few days can feel uncomfortable because your brain resists change. It will try to pull you back into familiar loops, not because it wants you to fail, but because it's trying to protect you from uncertainty. Your old patterns feel safe, even if they're not productive. This is why it's crucial in these first 7 days to anticipate the resistance and push through it. It's not about winning against a giant obstacle. It's about proving to yourself over and over that you can do something differently, even when it feels strange or inconvenient. Each time you make that choice, you weaken the grip of the old pattern and strengthen your capacity for change. Another powerful thing about breaking patterns in these first 7 days is that you start to uncover the triggers behind them. Patterns rarely exist in isolation. They're tied to specific cues. Maybe you always overeat at night because you're stressed from work. Maybe you skip workouts because your mornings are chaotic. Maybe you procrastinate because you feel overwhelmed and don't know where to start. But disrupting the pattern, you expose its roots. You begin to see the chain reaction, the trigger, the habit, and the reward your brain is seeking. When you see it clearly, you can change it deliberately instead of just reacting. One mistake people make in this stage is trying to replace old habits before fully breaking them. The first 7 days are not about building the perfect new routine. They're about creating enough space for the new routine to eventually take root. If you think of your mind as a garden, this is the week you're clearing the weeds and turning over the soil. You're making room for the seeds of change. It's not glamorous work, and sometimes you don't see the results immediately, but it's absolutely necessary. You can't plant something new in the same spot where the old is still thriving. You may also notice that breaking one pattern has a ripple effect. Change in one area often triggers change in others. If you start waking up earlier, you may naturally begin going to bed earlier. If you stop spending hours scrolling on your phone, you might realize you have time to prepare healthier meals. These small victories add up quickly, and they reinforce your belief that change is possible. Every day in this first week, you're sending a message to yourself: I am not stuck. I can do things differently. It's also worth remembering that breaking patterns is not about punishing yourself for the old ones. It's about recognizing that they served a purpose at one point, but no longer align with where you want to go. Some patterns might have been coping mechanisms, ways to manage stress or uncertainty. Now, you're choosing better tools for the journey ahead. This perspective makes the process less about loss and more about evolution. You're not destroying your old self, you're upgrading it. By the end of these 7 days, you may not have built your ideal life yet, but you'll have done something even more important. You'll have proven to yourself that you can interrupt the patterns that once felt automatic and unchangeable. That's the first real taste of freedom, and it sets the stage for everything that comes next. The next 7 days are for replacing bad habits with purposeful ones. Once you've disrupted the old patterns and created space, you can begin planting the seeds for the behaviors that will move you closer to the person you want to become. This stage is different from simply stopping something negative. It's about giving yourself something better to do in its place. Because here's the truth, nature abhors a vacuum. If you remove a habit and don't fill that space with something intentional, your mind will search for the nearest available option, which often means slipping back into the very patterns you work to break. Replacing is essential because it transforms the empty space into fertile ground for growth. This process begins with clarity. You need to know what you're building toward, not just what you're trying to avoid. If you've stopped wasting an hour scrolling on your phone every morning, what will you do with that hour instead? If you've stopped eating junk food late at night, what will you snack on that still satisfies you but fuels your body? Purposeful habits have a direction. They're not random actions, but deliberate choices that align with your bigger vision. Every time you replace a bad habit with a purposeful one, you're not just changing behavior, you're reinforcing your identity as the kind of person who lives with intention. It's also important to start small in this stage. People often try to go too big too fast, thinking that massive action will bring massive change. While the idea is appealing, it's rarely sustainable. Purposeful habits work best when they are simple enough to do consistently, but powerful enough to create momentum. If you've replaced your morning phone scroll with reading, you don't need to read for an hour. Start with 10 minutes. If you've replaced late night snacking with journaling or stretching, keep it light and enjoyable so it doesn't feel like another chore. The goal in these 7 days is not perfection, it's repetition. You're training your brain to see the new habit as the natural choice. Another key to replacing habits effectively is making them easy to start. This means reducing friction for the habits you want to keep and increasing friction for the ones you want to avoid. If you want to exercise in the morning, lay out your clothes and shoes the night before so the decision is already made when you wake up. If you want to eat healthier snacks, prepare them ahead of time so they're ready when cravings hit. This isn't just about discipline, it's about designing your environment so it supports the behaviors you want to see. The less resistance there is to starting the habit, the more likely it becomes a part of your daily rhythm. There's also a psychological shift that happens in this replacement stage. You start to realize that habits are not just actions, they are votes for the type of person you're becoming. Every time you choose the new habit over the old one, you're casting a vote for your future self. One workout doesn't make you fit, and one healthy meal doesn't transform your body, but each choice sends a signal to your brain, this is who I am now. Over time, the brain begins to adopt this identity, and the new habits become less of a forced effort and more of a natural extension of who you are. Replacing bad habits with purposeful ones also requires you to stay alert for moments of temptation. Your old habits won't disappear quietly. They'll try to sneak back in, especially when you're tired, stressed, or distracted. This is why it's important to keep your why visible. Whether it's a written reminder, a vision board, or simply a mental image of the life you're building, you need something that keeps your purpose front and center. The more emotionally connected you are to the reason behind the habit, the more likely you are to stick with it. One powerful thing about the stage is how quickly you start to see small results. If you've replaced watching TV late into the night with going to bed earlier, you'll notice more energy in the morning. If you've replaced impulsive spending with setting aside money for something meaningful, you'll feel a growing sense of control and security. These early wins are fuel. They make the habit feel worthwhile and encourage you to keep going. The results may be small at first, but they're proof that the new patterns are working. During these 7 days, you're essentially building a bridge from the old you to the new you. Each purposeful habit becomes a plank on that bridge. The more planks you lay, the sturdier it becomes, and the harder it is to fall back into old ways. By focusing on replacement rather than just elimination, you're not only removing the negative influences from your life, you're actively creating a structure that supports your growth. This is where transformation starts to feel real, because you're no longer just breaking away from the past. You're stepping into the future with intention. The final 7 days reveal your new energy, presence, and mindset to the world. This is the stage where the internal work you've been doing begins to show externally in ways you might not even realize. For the past 2 weeks, you've been disrupting old patterns and replacing them with purposeful habits. And now those changes are starting to radiate outward. People around you may not be able to pinpoint exactly what's different, but they can sense it. They notice it in your posture, in the way you speak, in how you carry yourself. This isn't because you've become a completely different person. It's because you've aligned your daily actions with the version of yourself you've been working toward. And that alignment creates a presence people can feel. In these final days, momentum is on your side. You've pushed through the resistance of breaking patterns. You've planted and nurtured new habits. And now you're starting to see results, not just in what you do, but in who you are being. Your energy feels different because you've removed so many of the mental and emotional weights you were carrying before. The mental fog that came from wasted time, poor habits, or constant self-doubt starts to lift. You have more clarity, and with clarity comes confidence. Confidence isn't about arrogance or showing off. It's the quiet certainty that you're moving in the right direction, that your life is in your hands. You may also notice that your interactions with people change during this stage. When you shift your energy, the way people respond to you shifts too. You speak with more intention. You listen more actively. You carry yourself with a calmness that comes from being in control of your own direction. These are subtle things, but they have a profound effect on how others perceive you. In many cases, you'll find people are drawn to you more, not necessarily because of what you've achieved, but because they're sensing the authenticity and focus you now carry. There's something deeply magnetic about someone who is living in alignment. When your words, actions, and values are moving in the same direction, you don't need to force your presence on anyone. It speaks for itself. This is why the final 7 days often feel like a turning point. The world is reflecting back to you the effort you've been putting in. People might comment on how energized you seem, how different your attitude is, or how much more engaged you are. These comments aren't just compliments. They're confirmations that your transformation is becoming visible beyond yourself. But this stage isn't just about how others see you. It's about how you see yourself. By now, you've built evidence that you are capable of change, and that evidence changes the story you tell yourself internally. Before, you might have doubted whether you could stick to a new habit or break an old one. Now, you've lived through 3 weeks of doing exactly that. You've seen yourself follow through, even when it was inconvenient or uncomfortable. That knowledge shifts your self-image, and a stronger self-image leads to even stronger actions. You start thinking less about whether you can and more about what's next. The final week is also when your new habits begin to feel less like a forced effort and more like a natural rhythm. You wake up and follow your new morning routine without overthinking it. You default to healthier choices without needing to talk yourself into it. The discipline that felt heavy at the start now feels lighter because your brain is beginning to automate the new patterns. This frees up mental energy for other things, bigger goals, creative ideas, deeper relationships. You're not constantly fighting yourself anymore. You're working with yourself. An interesting thing happens in this stage. You begin to inspire others without trying. People see your shift and start asking questions. What changed? How did you do it? What's your secret? This is a powerful reminder that transformation isn't just personal. It's contagious. Your commitment and visible results can spark others to examine their own patterns and consider making changes of their own. You're no longer just transforming for yourself. You've become an example for what's possible. This last stretch can feel both exciting and delicate. Exciting because you can feel the progress and taste the momentum. Delicate because you're still solidifying the foundation. You're in a sweet spot where the new version of yourself is taking shape, but the old version is still close enough to reach for you if you stop paying attention. That's why it's important to stay consistent in these days, not out of fear, but out of respect for the work you've done. Each day you reinforce the habits, the mindset, and the energy you've built, you make it harder to slip back. By the end of these 21 days, the changes are no longer just in your mind or your private routines. They're woven into the way you show up in the world. And that's why this stage is so powerful. It's the point where your transformation becomes undeniable, not because you've told people you've changed, but because they can see it for themselves. Becoming unrecognizable is about revealing your true self, not creating a fake one. Too often, when people talk about transformation, they imagine it as becoming someone entirely different, someone who looks, speaks, and behaves in ways that have no connection to who they are now. The problem with that approach is that it's built on pretending. It's an attempt to cover up the parts of yourself you dislike instead of understanding and reshaping them. Real transformation, the kind that makes people take a second look and say, wow, you're different, comes from peeling back the layers of fear, doubt, and self-limiting beliefs to reveal the version of yourself that's been there all along but hasn't been allowed to fully exist. This process starts with honesty. You can't reveal your true self if you're still lying to yourself about who you are or what you want. Many people live behind versions of themselves they've built for the approval of others. A mask for work, a mask for friends, a mask for family. Over time, they lose touch with the person underneath. The journey to becoming unrecognizable is really a journey of remembering what you value, what excites you, what you believe in, and what kind of life you actually want to live. This isn't about inventing a persona. It's about stripping away everything that doesn't belong. When you approach transformation from this angle, you stop chasing superficial changes just for the sake of looking different. You may still improve your appearance, your skills, or your habits, but you do it because they align with the person you want to be, not because you're trying to impress anyone. This distinction matters because change built on approval seeking is fragile. The moment you stop getting the validation you're looking for, the motivation fades. But when change is built on truth, your truth, it lasts because you're not doing it for applause. You're doing it because it feels right to you. Revealing your true self also means confronting the parts of you that are uncomfortable to face. Maybe you've been holding back your voice because you fear judgment. Maybe you've been living smaller than your potential because you're afraid of failing. These fears are like walls that hide you from the world. In the process of transformation, you begin to dismantle those walls brick by brick. Each time you take an action that challenges your old limitations, speaking up in a meeting, setting a boundary, starting something you've been afraid to try, you remove another layer of what's been hiding you. Eventually, People start to see you more clearly, and you start to see yourself more clearly too. An interesting thing happens when you live in alignment with your true self. You naturally stand out, not because you're trying to, but because authenticity is rare. People are drawn to it. In a world full of masks and performance, someone who is comfortable being who they are feels refreshing. This is what makes you unrecognizable. It's not that you've created a new version of yourself. It's that you've stopped pretending to be the old one. You're showing up in ways that feel genuine, and people can sense the difference. It's also important to realize that revealing your true self doesn't mean everyone will like it. In fact, some people might pull away because the version of you they were comfortable with no longer exists. This is part of the process. Not everyone is meant to walk with you into the next chapter of your life. When you reveal your true self, you're not only attracting the right people into your life, you're also creating space by letting go of the ones who don't align with who you're becoming. That can feel like loss in the moment, but it's actually liberation. You're making room for relationships and opportunities that fit the real you. Becoming unrecognizable in this sense isn't about perfection. It's about liberation. It's about moving through the world without the constant weight of pretending, without the exhaustion of fitting into molds that were never meant for you. It's about making decisions based on your own values rather than the expectations of others. And the more you do this, the more your life begins to reflect that truth. You feel lighter, more confident, more at peace, and ironically, more powerful. When people see you after this transformation, they might comment on the way you look or the things you're doing, but what they're really noticing is your energy. They're noticing the absence of hesitation in your voice, the clarity in your eyes, the way you occupy space without apology. They might not have the words for it, but they can sense that something is different. And the truth is, you're not different in the way they think. You're simply more you than you've ever been. That's the essence of becoming unrecognizable. It's not about creating a character. It's about letting the world finally meet the person you've always been capable of being. Change doesn't happen because the calendar tells you it's time. It happens because you decide. In the first 7 days, you break the patterns that have been holding you hostage. In the next 7, you replace them with habits that pull you forward. And in the final 7, you begin to see and feel the transformation, not just in your actions, but in the way you show up in the world. Becoming unrecognizable isn't about pretending to be someone else. It's about shedding the layers of doubt, fear, and distraction until the real you stands in the open, undeniable and unafraid. 21 days is enough to change your direction, to prove to yourself that you are not stuck, and to create momentum that no one can take from you. The person you want to become isn't far away. It's you without the excuses. The only question is whether you'll wait for the right time or whether you'll decide today. Because if you do, in just 21 days, you won't just look different. You'll be someone the old you wouldn't even recognize.